Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to do one of the videos that I've been requested the most, which is my first tier list for all the ships in the game. This will be the only tier list I will make, I think, until the DLC, right? So let's get started, right? First of all, Abbasids. Abbasids, I would say, are in mm, I would say more like the middle of the pack spot right now. Like they aren't super strong, but I don't think they are neither amongst the weakest ships. Like if we think a bit about their matchups, I would say they are slightly favored against English, French, HRE. Then I think it's very close against Delhi, China, Mali, and Ottomans, right? So three favorable matchups, four balanced ones, and then I think they really struggle against Rus and also Mongols, right? So with that in mind, I think it has to be either A or B. I think I'm gonna go with A for now. Maybe we will see later. Probably A, but in the lower end. Yeah, also in some maps, like for instance Volcanic Island, it can be super strong, but in the usual maps like Arabia and so on, yeah, either A or B. Let's put it in A. English. I know English is the most popular ship in terms of how much it's played. Right now, I don't think English is in a good spot at all. I'm not sure if I would even say it's probably the weakest ship right now in like again maps like Arabia, Lipani, or even English is just strong in some hybrid maps, I would say. But these are maps that are usually not in ladder, right? For instance, Canal, it's very good. I guess Golden Heights was unranked for a while, and English excels there. In terms of matchups, I think English is bad against French, bad against Mongols. Against Rus, considering how strong Rus is, I think English is also terrible. Yeah, no, I don't think English can compete in reality with Rus. I think they struggle a lot against Delhi. I think against China, unless the spawn is really good for them to pressure the food, they also struggle a lot. I think they also struggle against Mali. Even well, that one is close to balance, I would say. And I think they are fine against Ottomans. So yeah, English again, and against HRE, it's probably balanced as well. Like I think they are slightly unfavored in most matchups. Then there are two or three matchups that are really hard. So it's hard to note to put it any better than C, right? Maybe even D. But I don't think it's that bad. Like I think it's still playable. So let's go with C. French. French, I would say it's in a decent spot. It has a few really hard matchups like Mongols, Ottomans, and Mali. Especially French against Mali is probably the hardest matchup in the game, I would say right now. I can't think of any other matchup that I dislike playing as much as Mali. And this is coming from someone who would consider himself a French main. So with that in mind, it also has, like, for instance, against Delhi, I think it's slightly favorable for French. I think against China and HRE, it's fine. It can compete against Rus and the same against English and Abbasid, right? So I think I would put French right now in B tier. I think they are in a decent spot, but they don't really excel right now too much. HRE, it's a tough one because HRE is one of those ships that I feel doesn't have terrible matchups. Like it may not be like, for instance, I think Rus is favored against HRE, but it's very playable. I would also say Mali and Ottomans. Probably Ottomans is actually the strongest ship against HRE, I would say. Because when you think about HRE's strengths, it's probably relics, right? Their gameplay relies a lot around relics. And Ottomans with their Imam Vizier point and their fast castle builds can really uh, give the HRE player a really hard time, right? But overall, even HRE against Mongols, it's very playable. HRE against Delhi is very good for HRE. HRE against China is good for HRE, right? So it like HRE is one of those ships that you main. You may have some slightly unfavorable matchups, but for the most part, all of them are playable. So I'm going to yeah either or right. And right now, let's put it here. Like I would say, slightly in a slightly better spot than French. Mongols. Mongols right now is very strong. I would say probably they only really struggle against Rus. which it's a quite hard matchup. Mongols against Rus for the Mongol player. But then when I think Mongol against Delhi, I think it's good for Mongols. Mongol against Mali, I would give the edge to Mongols, but I think it's a close one. Mongol against Ottoman. Actually, Mongol against Ottomans is close. Maybe even. I think I prefer being the Ottoman player in that one, but in terms of balance, probably close, right? And then I think Mongol beats English. They beat French. Actually, it's a close one against Abbasid. I think they are also slightly favored. So I think it's either S or A tier. Yeah, close one. Let's go like this for now. Rus, Rus has to go here. Right now, Rus doesn't have weak matchups. I feel like they are either, like for instance, Rus against French is actually, I think, close to balanced. I still prefer being the Rus player, but I think it's very playable as French, right? Rus against China, the same. I think it's probably slightly good for Rus, but it's very playable, right? But the other matchups, the other 7 matchups, I think Rus has the. I mean, it depends on the maps, of course, but in general, I would say Rus has the upper hand on those. And then in hybrid maps or hybrid maps like Boulder Bay, Holy Island, so on, it's by far the best ship, right? So when you have a ship that is so strong both in water and land, I feel like it has to be a steer, right? And in my opinion, it's currently the strongest ship, right? Why? I think several things, but most of them revolve around the Kremlin. The Kremlin just allows you to play very safely. Um, it in a way it also is a booming landmark because it gives you a plus 20% wood income. It also has the militia, right? That combined with their very smooth build orders because they don't need to gather gold due to the bounty mechanic and so on, I feel like Rus is in a great spot right now. Which, by the way, Golden Gate I still believe is one of the best landmarks in the game, right? But the Kremlin is just probably the best one with the chapel. But yeah, Delhi. Delhi. I feel like in the last couple of weeks I'm changing my mind about Delhi. I thought it belonged in A tier. I thought it was in a really good spot, but right now I'm more inclined to put it into B. Let's think a bit where exactly. Mm. Like Delhi, for instance, is very strong against English, and that's about it, right? Against Ottomans as well. But the other, it has very hard matchups against Rus, HRE, China. I think it also struggles against Mongols, and the other ones are more or less balanced. So I think it has to be either or. Um, yeah, very close with French. I think I put it here because there are some really hard matchups for Delhi. I don't know. I was about to say that Delhi has some really unwinnable matchups or close to unwinnable, like Delhi against China, Delhi against HRE. But it's the same with French against Mali and Ottomans, right? Yeah, either or. I'm not sure. Let's go like this. Let's go like this, but it's really, really close between those. China. I think China probably goes here or maybe here. I think I'm gonna put it here. It it doesn't have really terrible matchups. It's a bit like HRE. Like there are some matchups we are slightly behind uh, in the current meta, right? And then they have some good matchups like Delhi. China against Ottomans is also very good for China. Even China against Mongols, I think, is very playable. So yeah, it's in a similar spot to HRE, but I would still say it's slightly stronger. Um, so yeah, I think I would put it like B tier, but in the stronger side for sure. Mali, I think has to go on A tier, right? Either very close, I would say, with Mongols. Let's think a bit about their matchups. So I think they struggle against Rus. I think against Mongols, it's maybe slightly better for Mongol, but very close. I think they struggle a bit against Abbasid too, though. And against Ottomans, yeah. Yeah, no, now that I think about it a bit more, like they have a really good matchup into French, but even these matchups are they are good. Mali is slightly ahead, but I don't think it's a clear win. Even Mali against Delhi. I think it may not even be in Mali's favor, right? So with all these things in mind, maybe yeah. Before I thought it was either or better or slightly worse than Mongols, but now I'm thinking it has to go into one of these two spots, right? In fact, probably here. I think the issue is that it doesn't have like Abbasid has this really hard matchup with Mali. It's hard as well against Rus, but not as hard. Um, Very close. Again, a bit of a similar scenario than here, but yeah, I still lean more towards putting it slightly below Abbasid. And Ottomans is really like their weak point used to be their late game, but after the recent patch with their buff to the Great Bombard and their faster production from military schools and so on Imperial, I think Ottoman is definitely A tier. The question is where exactly in A tier, right? Is it crazy to say that Ottomans is better than Mali right now? Let's think a bit about. Oops, not there. Let's leave it like here right now. Let's think a bit about Ottoman matchups. So Ottoman struggles against Rus and China for sure. I think they are, and they also struggle against Delhi and probably even against the English too. Yeah, yeah, I think they belong in there. They have some very good matchups like against French, against Mali, against HRE probably, and then these two are, I think, slightly good for them as well, but close to balance, right? So, yeah, I think I would go with something like this. Like these two are completely. I'm completely sure. This is where I have the most doubts. Like whether is Delhi or better or worse than French. I think it's really close. But other than that, I think I would go with the list with this list. Hmm. Yep. Let's leave it here. So yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video and see you tomorrow. Have a good one.